Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, reviewing the Grand Prix of Alabama and a certain bit of other news which happened in the last week, which we'll get onto a bit later. Funnily enough, I sent Archie a message last week saying neither of our drivers have won since we started this podcast. I think we're cursed. Give it 1 week later, and both those outcomes have completely changed. So we've had a bit of a crazy week to review. But let's start off at Barber Motorsports Park, where Scott McLaughlin took his second victory in a row at the circuit, his first victory of the season, now Penske's first victory of the season, overriding a difficult week to claim what was quite a dominant victory. Started from pole, pretty much led the entire race, and romped home for a first victory of the season.
Yeah, it was a really fun race, to be fair. I thought there was some pretty incredible racing. It was aggressive, heads up, some bold moves. We'll get onto a soundbite from Will Power on that actually a bit later, but yeah, there was quite a lot of contact through the field. There was some wheel banging and kind of proof of how robust these cars are. And yeah, you kind of in that mid phase of the race didn't really know what was going to happen. McLaughlin kind of always looked like he had the strongest car all through, well, from the Fast Six in qualifying, obviously notched pole, and then yeah, he dominated the early stages of the race and kind of drove away. Really, kind of got pegged back a couple of times by cautions, and I think it was the second caution in particular that really looked like it was almost going to be detrimental to his race. And then Will Power, and I think it was Christian Lundqvist behind him at the time, it looked like those guys on the three-stop had been kind of completely screwed over really by that caution. They had a long way to go, but then there was another caution which kind of evened things out again, brought them back in. And yeah, in the end it was McLaughlin leading the three-stop, Alex Palou leading the two-stop strategy, which ultimately required too much of a fuel save, and McLaughlin ended up cycling straight back to the front. I think he even got out ahead of Palou actually after his final stop and could just streak away. Had another caution late on, pegged back again after Christian Rasmussen spun. Wasn't collected by anyone, thankfully. It was quite a hairy moment, but yeah, again, McLaughlin kind of just drove away at the front, managed that restart really well, and yeah, it was a dominant weekend. And obviously after the week, which we'll get onto shortly, responded very well. It's been a very strong weekend from McLaughlin, putting all that stuff behind him, really focusing quite well, and great work from Team Penske, really.
Yeah, like you said, a lot kind of happened throughout the race. I think there was a couple of times to like take a breather, but especially with the cautions going on, the strategies were kind of all over the places, especially with the three stops and two stops. No one really knew when to go in, like whether to go in a bit earlier and then hope for another caution, and it was just all over. And like you said, they kind of, Penske as well as McLaughlin, kind of just took that home really well.
It was quite a fun race. I think the caution toward the end, lap 57 and 47, whatever it was, created two different strategies. We probably thought we were going to get a bit of a Long Beach repeat, but we soon realised that not everyone in the field is Scott Dixon, so therefore it's not going to work. So points to note from today, only Dixon can do the Dixon strategies. There's no point anyone else attempting to do them because it's not going to work. And obviously McLaughlin built up quite a lead there. That moment where he cycled back, he was obviously battling with Will Power at some point, which ended up being full lead. Power overtook him into turn 5, I think I'm correct in saying. Yeah, he did run the outside, and then McLaughlin got him back into turn 1 the following lap, and we didn't realise at the time, but that was quite a pivotal moment in the race. That eventually was the one at the side of the race, and Power had a really strong weekend yet again. He's had a really good start to the season, so all round a great bounce back from Penske, a 1-2 finish ahead of Linus Lundqvist, we'll get onto a bit later, who absolutely starred today. McLaughlin pretty dominant. I think during that caution, you felt comfortable he was going to win. So second race win in Alabama is sort of making this track a little bit of a masterclass for him.
Yeah, we're recording on Sunday this week, and yeah, no, it was a top weekend from McLaughlin. He really looks at home at Barber, and yeah, I think Power said this as well. McLaughlin said this. They felt the car just rolled out the truck, and they didn't really have to change anything to it. It was just super fast all weekend. Obviously, locking out that front row in qualifying was the start of really just showing, we're focused. We're not letting ourselves get distracted after what's happened during the week. And in terms of Power in qualifying, he's made back-to-back fast sixes. That's 2 qualifyings in a row that he's missed out on pole by less than 1/10 of a second. and 2 Fast Sixes in a row. Also means he has eclipsed his 2023 total of only 1 Fast Six appearance. And Power didn't actually have the easiest day. He wasn't feeling great in warm-up. He had an engine change shortly before the race after issues again in warm-up. And he had an issue in the race as well, where he lost a second after going deep into the gravel. So even some of the top drivers were caught out, made errors today, but just didn't quite have the edge of McLaughlin. He said that, after the week Penske has had, he didn't want the headlines to then be 2 Penskes taking each other out. So brought home a very solid one too. Qualifying was obviously the start of a pretty dominant weekend. McLaughlin took pole ahead of Power, and then you also had Lundqvist, O'Ward behind them. Obviously, we'll get to the Firestone Fast Six predictions a little bit later. But as we said, Power obviously has already overcome his Fast Six total from last year. And we actually asked him about that in the press conference.
All right, let's take a few offline or virtually anyway. Let's go to Dan Jones, DIVEBOMB Motorsport Magazine. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Dave. Well done today, guys. Will, just first of all for you, I was wondering if anything sort of clicked in qualifying this year compared to last season. I think you've already got more Fast Six this season than you did for the entirety of last year. So has anything changed at all on that front?
We worked pretty hard in the off season on the car. Chevy has improved for sure. And, last year's tough for me. I just wasn't all there because my wife was sick. So the preparation for the start of the season wasn't good. I was constantly in the back of my mind worried what might happen and whether I should even keep racing or not. Because once you have a kid, I do a dangerous sport. And if my wife's sick, what if something happens to her and then I'm doing this? So, I was sort of juggling that last year and just all in right now, as I usually am. It's just a weird circumstance, unfortunate circumstance last year.
And then for Scott, sort of a similar question. I think you ended last season with 7 front rows in the last 8 races, and obviously you've got the pole here today. I mean, what's clicked for you, especially compared to your 2 teammates, particularly at the end of last season, starting this one?
The last couple of races we just probably haven't nailed qualifying, which circumstances and mistakes by me and whatnot, but we've been through to Q2 and just missed on the Fast Six. But it's nice to nail and get ourselves in our first Fast Six of the year and put it on pole. But yeah, ultimately it's so hard to just continually be up the front in the sport. You've got to put everything into it. And as Will shows, like if you have a little bit of adversity or whatever, it is very hard to keep track, keep focused. But we've all been, working together really well, and I think we're really pushing this team forward along with Team Chevy, and it's nice to turn up to the racetrack knowing that, you can have a really good shot at a win or a pole every time.
And just obviously with the events of the last week, I was just wondering, is there sort of an extra motivation to really go out there and prove yourself again tomorrow?
Oh, look, you just take it as it comes. Ultimately, we're always out there to win, and like I said before, it's been a tough week, but it is what it is, and we've moved forward, and we'll just keep starting our championship, I guess, comeback, we'd like to say, and just do the best we can. And the best thing we can do is continue getting poles and hopefully get a win, but we know it's going to be hard.
Obviously, there we touched on Scott's fairly difficult week, and I think it's probably time to touch on the elephant in the room, which was himself and Josef Newgarden being disqualified from St. Petersburg, and Will Power being docked 10 points for illegal use of push to pass. If you didn't know, push to pass can only be used on the alternate start-finish line. Team Penske had supposedly manipulated the data where all 3 of their drivers could use it before that start-finish line, quite bluntly, against the rules. All broke out in Long Beach in the warm-up after there was some weird glitch of push to pass was disabled, but it was noticed that Penske were still using it. So that raised some red flags there. And then we got news on Wednesday that Newgarden and McLaughlin had been disqualified, and Power had been docked 10 points, which turned out to be 2 because he sort of benefited from McLaughlin and Newgarden being disqualified. But that's the bit. The big story is, did they cheat deliberately or not, basically? And it's turned into a bit of a saga. What has happened? And it's all gone a bit crazy in IndyCar world.
Yeah, I mean, Newgarden was leading the championship. He was dropped to 11th, I believe. And Dan, I think you said he's now 16th after finishing 16th at Barber. McLaughlin was bottom of the championship. So his win is a very important kind of, just starts a building back up. He's now He's up
Ninth, I think.
to 9th in the championship. Yeah, he was rock bottom, up 20 places, I think. But yeah, the whole situation has been quite a mess. I mean, I think it kind of shows the scale of the situation that I believe it is the first ever disqualification for victory in modern IndyCar, at least. The first win that was taken away since Al Unser Jr. in 1995, which was actually reinstated in the end, so that wasn't even taken away. People just don't get disqualified in IndyCar, which shows just the rarity and kind of just the scale of what this situation is. And I think it's incredible. You know, we'll get into more depth, but that such a thing's been able to happen at such kind of a well-oiled operation. They're owned by the series owner, which obviously adds an extra dimension. He supposedly wasn't aware. He supposedly was not happy at all about it. There's just a lot to unpick, isn't there? I think IndyCar deserve credit for the way they've acted. The team are adamant that it was an accident still, and I think it's not gone down well, that there's been quite a bit of discord between what all of the drivers have said. There've been a lot of different stories from each of them. You know, that's led to skepticism through the paddock at the end of the day. You know, we've had statements from Power and McLaughlin to start with, then Newgarden did a press conference, and you just don't really know who is culpable. Newgarden's team thought it was a rule change that allowed them to use it on starts and restarts, which, you know, if he's not told it's wrong, then why would he assume that it's wrong? So, yeah, I mean, in Long Beach, he even came on the radio to say, my push to pass isn't working on a restart, which I think is decent evidence that, you know, we can take Newgarden for his word that, yes, okay, he purposely pressed the button, but also the fact that he thought, you know, it's not something that's illegal. So many thoughts, so many notes kind of accumulated across the weekend. It's just been chaotic week. I mean, it's impossible to analyze everything, and ultimately it's not something you like to see. It's, yeah, all been a bit tiring, uncomfortable.
It's just something that I think they handled really well. That's would have been like the only kind of penalty and kind of thing that would have solved this. Not really solved it, but would have been anything that would have been right. Like I said, skepticism, we don't know at all. And I think I agree with your point that the drivers may not have known about it. Can I just get in the car? And if they say the car's right, then unless it's obviously like in their face, then they're just going to drive it and they're going to see what happens. And I think kind of they're pushing the buttons, maybe some sort of muscle memory. Maybe they didn't mean to, maybe they did. We don't know what was happening. And also with the races, adrenaline, at that moment, there's so much going through the head. We have no idea what they was kind of thinking and meaning in that moment.
Well, there's a lot of different stories here. There's a lot of different questions. I think the first one is Penske supposedly manipulated this data. They claim they'd left it on from a hybrid test at Sebring in August, but they haven't been caught out for doing it in Portland and Laguna. So why suddenly is it working in St. Pete? So I think the first question is, did Penske deliberately manipulate this data to give a driver a disadvantage? That's the first unknown. We probably would never find out the answer, but that's the first one. And then each driver's got a different answer, which is the other thing which doesn't match up. Newgarden says he suddenly thought this was in the rules. A lot of drivers do doubt that. They suddenly thought with no notice from IndyCar that this was suddenly in the rules. McLaughlin accidentally pressed it. I think they said it only used for 1.9 seconds. He pressed it out of habit, whilst Power didn't press it at all, which is why he didn't get disqualified. I mean, it's a difficult balance, obviously, accept the penalties in it, but there's a lot of things which don't match up. It's just a bit odd. All the drivers have a different statement. They all have a different side of their story. And then it's, well, what did Penske do? Have they done this deliberately? And I said we'll probably never know. But you know, when you look at the fact last year at Portland and Laguna, there was all of a sudden it wasn't an issue there, and suddenly in St. Petersburg it is. I mean, it's hard what to think here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're not technical gurus, and ultimately nobody but those directly involved in the situation know exactly what's happened. And yeah, it's kind of right that you talk about discord between the drivers, because, you know, how can one car think there's a rule change, the other car doesn't? And at a team of Penske's level, why is someone in the team not checking with the series or even checking with the rest of the team, the 3 car, the 12 car, whether this is actually a rule change? You don't just assume something like that. I think that's why there is a lot of doubt. And yeah, there's other things that kind of don't add up. Newgarden said it's really obvious when you press the button. I pressed it on purpose because, you know, I thought it was legal. I had access to it. Why else would I have access to it? I think that was his point. Then McLaughlin says he did it accidentally and didn't realise he presses it. doesn't add up again. I think that's why, you know, a lot of their competitors said it was just BS. Graham Rahal said they're digging a hole of BS, and you know, he said that it's just poor excuse after poor excuse, and it's really, really pushing it's really proving a tough sell. And yes, okay, cheating is an inherent part of motorsport, or at least pushing the limits, trying to find loopholes. And I'm not saying they did cheat, because we don't know. It could have genuinely, hand on heart, been an accident. I think Romain Grosjean's quote, I picked this out, it was quite a nice one. You don't cheat until you've been caught cheating. And yeah, is that the case? We just don't know. But I think Penske pride themselves on the details, and it's making it really hard to believe that it's an accident when, you know, it's just a simple line of code. You'd think that, you know, given all of the meticulous analysis and assessment they do of things, that you would pick out a little error in a piece of code. These are geniuses working on these teams. So yeah, it is really, really unclear what the truth is, and nobody knows the truth. Those within Penske say that this is their truth, but then everyone on the outside is not buying it. Even Newgarden said he spoke to Jay Fry, president of IndyCar. He could tell that Jay Fry wasn't buying it, and Newgarden said, yes, this story about believing there was a rule change, it doesn't sound believable, and no one is really buying it.
The story was too convenient to believe, and as you said, these people are smart engineers. Like, on the data, you would have thought push to pass would be immediately obvious that it was used at this point, and you know, they had a 6-week break between Long Beach and St. Petersburg. You would have thought someone would have tried to check this out. I mean, nothing adds up, and that's why there is a big question mark. I mean, there was a meeting at Barber where Roger Penske's taken in all the other team bosses to apologise for it. He's not very happy about the whole situation, understandably. Penske, if you didn't know, got caught cheating in NASCAR as well this year, where Joey Logano used a webbed glove in qualifying for Atlanta, I think. Don't quote me on that. Which isn't a good look on Roger being caught cheating in 2 different series. So, look, the stories don't add up, and we'll probably never get the full picture as to what happened. But it's an argument that's going to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's left a bit of a sour taste, I think.
You would think, though, that a team kind of like Penske would, I know that they didn't have a lot of time to get the story straight, but you'd think that they would have sorted something out, kind of everyone speak together, everyone kind of go along the same lines. And I know that they got caught out in a few things, but you still would have thought that they would have gone in to some sort of meeting, some sort of game plan, like anything. And for there to still be so many conflicting stories and everything, it's so confusing to everyone. And like I said, we don't know what's happening. We're not over there. We're kind of not in their teams. We're not there, so we don't know, and no one will know except from them.
Yeah, just to quickly kind of touch on both sides, what suggests this may have been a mistake? I mean, it's too obvious, almost too obvious to be purposeful. You would expect, with so much telemetry data, so many onboards that are analysed, it would be too easy to be caught. But then kind of on the flip side of that, surely someone in the team has then thought, oh, is this right? Because then it comes back to, why are you not checking if this is a rule change? If you think there's a rule change, you don't just assume it. You check it. I know it's a thing for thermal, and push to pass on restarts and starts was legal there, but yeah, I mean, it just again comes back to, we are not kind of technically savvy. We don't know the technical ins and outs. There's so much really confusing things, but you know, drivers at the end of the day, I think it was Newgarden's pressed the button, I think it was 29 times last year. And it's almost a joke in the paddock, apparently. I think they said this on off track as well, that Newgarden just presses the button just in case. What if, they've accidentally left push to pass on? And you want to kind of do these things just in case, because you don't want to be left behind if there is some sort of rule change. But then, yeah, there are just so many questions. There's just so much suspicion, and it all comes back to Penske perfect, but how can you miss some sort of minor detail if you're claiming you've just left some tiny thing in the data? That is the minor detail that they pride themselves on being so perfect with. So, yeah, I'm just not sure, really. It's kind of, there's so many confusing and conflicting thoughts, I think, kind of floating around everywhere. And yeah, I mean, just give IndyCar a bit of credit as well. I know it was 6 weeks after, but yeah, maybe they should have found out before. Again, it comes back to, you know, there's so much data that they look at. Maybe there's too much data to kind of scrutinize everything, but at least they did find it. they gave out a punishment that, you know, at the end of the day was fit for whether intentional or not was cheating. And yeah, Roger Penske owns the series, but they didn't crumble, which again, I think that they deserve credit for. The integrity of the series should not come into question from this, I don't think, because they took the steps that they should and addressed it quickly. So I just actually, as one last thing, wanted to add, just I respect Josef Newgarden for coming out, and this isn't saying I don't respect Scott McLaughlin or Will Power for releasing statements. They obviously kind of played a lesser part in this, but I respect Newgarden for coming out and arranging a special press conference, because, you know, he felt that was the best way to go about it. Just at the end of the day, face the interrogation from the media, come out, you know, say he felt he was accountable, to take responsibility, not shift the blame anywhere. You know, he could have lied, but he was very clear. And when I say very clear, you know, you could say, yeah, oh well, what if he was acting? It seemed pretty clear that he was steadfast in saying, no matter what the perception, I'm going to tell the truth. He could have very easily said, yeah, I accidentally pressed the button, but he said, you know what, hand on heart, I pressed the button, I did it. And yeah, the emotion that he showed in that press conference seemed pretty genuine. He said that his preparation had been hindered for the weekend, hadn't really slept much. And yeah, I mean, I've spoken about everything else with what he said about coming on the radio in Long Beach, saying that push to pass was broken on a restart. For me, that's one of the biggest bits of evidence to suggest that, at least on the driver's side, the drivers aren't really culpable in this. I don't know whether their reputation will take a hit or not. Newgarden said, you know, maybe it will take time to build that back up. But yeah, I think Newgarden, you know, he's always come across as a kind of ample professional, and yeah, I respected him for doing that. I thought he came across really well, and he even said, you know, we'll play his clip in a minute, that the disqualification was fair. You know, he's fronted up, he's had the difficult conversations, and yeah, I respect him for that. But the whole situation, it does leave a sour taste. So in the press conference, we asked him about, well, his conversation with Roger Penske, but first of all, whether he felt that disqualification was indeed a fair penalty. And I think you'll enjoy his answers on this. And yeah, as I said, he got a little bit emotional as well.
We'll take one or two off Zoom. Hang on, Nathan. Yeah, we'll get back to you. Archie O'Reilly, go ahead.
Hi, Joseph. I mean, do you think the disqualification is a fair penalty, and do you think that is the right precedent to set from the series?
Yes, absolutely. You know, one thing I didn't state, which was important for me to also say, is I do believe the integrity of the series is absolutely paramount. You know, the series has to hold everybody accountable, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the intent. And they've done the right thing, you know, by trying to throw the book at us, and they should. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter what the intent was. If you broke a rule, you broke a rule, and you should suffer the consequences. And the series has to uphold that standard. And so it makes me, you know, it makes me proud that I'm a part of this series that does that. That's a series I want to be a part of. So I think the penalty's fair. It's, you know, it's crushing. I mean, you know, I'm going to look back on it too and say, well, I don't want that win on my books either. I don't want it. I'm glad they're taking it away. If it was tainted, then I don't want to be near it. And unfortunately it is, you know, I can't reverse that in time, and it's good what's happened. I'm really pleased by it.
And have you spoken to Roger about the situation, and maybe just detail how he's reacted to it?
I have spoken to him. I've spoken to him once, and he did not take it well whatsoever, as you could imagine. You know, I was interrogated at first. And, you know, it's I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I've not met somebody with higher integrity than that man. And I mean that. So, you know, yeah, it wasn't taken well.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate you doing this.
Right, so that was the Penske news. Let's get on to Alabama, which is a bit more enjoyable to talk about. It was a fun race. I enjoyed it. It was classic IndyCar, elbows out, multiple strategies, nice venue, and some funny moments, which we'll talk about later. But great race all around. Obviously, it was some McLaughlin power, but I think maybe the star of the day, Linus Lundqvist in third place, went on this sort of a bit of a weird strategy. There was this sort of the traditional strategy, and then there was the people trying to be Dixon, and Lundqvist was sort of on neither of them and decided to go straight down the middle of them. And he had the tyres and the fuel, whizzed past everyone at the end, and strategy just really worked for Lundqvist, and he got a really well-deserved podium. I'm ever so delighted for Linus Lundqvist.
Yeah, and he came across quite, he was trying to play it down in the press conference afterwards. He was saying, yeah, it was strategy, but at the end of the day, you have to execute that strategy. And yeah, by the end of the race, he was just absolutely sailing past people. I guess he had quite a quiet race, really. He kind of just cycled up there. And yeah, obviously there is the strategy element, but as I said, you have to execute that strategy. Execution is also important, and not making mistakes when you saw some pretty good drivers making mistakes. But yeah, third race for Ganassi, sixth in IndyCar. To get a podium this early on, I think is really a marker of just how good he is.
Did a good job at holding off McLaughlin on the final restart as well. So a lot of credit to him there. I mean, he held him up for a good 10 laps or so. So a lot of credit to Lundqvist. I mean, I was very excited about how he'd perform this year, and I think he's started off very nicely.
So after the race, I spoke to Linus Lundqvist in the press conference, along with Will Power as well. So first of all, here is Lundqvist on how he evaluates his Ganassi career so far and what exactly clicked in the race today. And then a bit from Will Power on just how much he enjoys the kind of elbows out racing that we very much enjoy on TV.
Archie O'Reilly, we'll take one off Zoom. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Dave. Firstly, for Linus, how do you evaluate the start to life at Ganassi? What do you feel are maybe the biggest challenges that you've faced? And then what do you feel really clicked in the race today?
What really clicked was honestly strategy. That was a big part of it. And I think me listening to the team as well, because the first 3/4 of the race wasn't that much fun, because it was basically, at times like, all right, we're going to have to give up this position and just hit your number. And hopefully we'll kind of pay it off at the end of the race. So that's kind of what made it. And I think as well, like we had decent pace, especially when we got to some clean air. But life at Ganassi has been great. I mean, the whole team is so talented. From the floor at the shop to the top guys with Mike and Chip running the whole team. And obviously as a rookie, you come in and, you're sitting in debriefs across from Alex and Scott, and what better place would you want to be at? And I think honestly, even the fuel saving that I did now was a big learning thing that I got from Scott, who did it last week at Long Beach. So, it kind of just proves that if you keep your eyes and ears open, you can definitely benefit from it.
And for Will, it's obviously mentioned the racing was quite elbows out, quite aggressive. I mean, it made for a kind of good TV product, but do you think that's how the racing should be in IndyCar?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone fights hard for every position in this series because it's just so tough. So I don't expect anything else. I mean, that's the beauty of IndyCar racing. I think it's why fans like it. Anyone can win any week. Obviously, can get so mixed up with yellows, which is exciting for the fans as well, as much as if you're leading, you don't like that. But it's great fun, like no joke. Yeah, I don't think there's a series in the world you get more satisfaction out of than this series.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Dave. Congratulations today.
Right, P4 was Felix Rosenqvist. He qualified in 5th, which was bizarrely his worst qualifying of the season, but once again made the fast 6 in Meyer Shank with a best finish of the year in P4. Overtook Pelot on the final restart, I believe, around the outside of turn 5, which was a very nice manoeuvre. And it sort of starts of the season. You had the front row in St. Petersburg and the pole in Long Beach. It didn't quite work out, but I feel like he's got a satisfactory result today, which he can take a bit more confidence from.
It was actually leading up to the race, the rockiest season of the week so far, the rockiest weekend of the season so far for Rosenqvist. Who, I think again he mentioned just having to evaluate the brake issue after Long Beach. I think he said he had a telemetry issue in first practice, had an engine issue in second practice, had to do an engine change, overcame that, and I think the consistency he's showing in qualifying, despite actually not being happy with the car, to still qualify, it was 5th, wasn't it? It's super impressive. And then, he was kind of just right in the podium fight. It was more of a fuel save, but I think did he have a tyre advantage maybe on Pelot in the end? But another top 10, and that is superb consistency for a team that were slightly all over the place in that regard last year.
5th place was obviously Pelot. He tried the Dixon strategy. His strategist Barry Wanzer said Dixon's the best at this, but I think Alex might be the second best. He's doing a Dixon. Ended up 5th place. He was the lead on the alternate strategy, but quickly sort of proved that it was too much of a task. Had the fuel save quite significantly, which saw him lose out to Lundqvist and to Rosenqvist. Look, in a longer picture, it's going to be these sort of results which make a season. It just ended up P5 at the flag, which, look, isn't his best result. I think he's finished pretty strongly at Barber. Obviously, won his first race in 21. I think he finished 2nd last year and 4th the year before that, something like that. 2nd in 22 and 5th last year. But yeah, it's these results which longer term will win you championships, and that's what he'll take from today.
Can I say consistency a lot on this podcast, but Palou is one of them that is always kind of consistently there. His results always show, and kind of even towards the beginning, P5 it looks good, but for Palou, it could be better. But like we said, further on, this is where it's going to benefit him, and just these are little points where eventually he'll maybe get an edge on people, and just the little margins. And I think at the beginning, he kind of had a little battle or whatever with Max Armstrong, I think it was. I don't know if it was a battle, but they did have a little thing for a couple of laps. And yeah, he tried a strategy that didn't work for him, but I think he kind of tried as hard as he could, and like I said, Scott Dixon is the only one that can really pull it off, and I think he was bold and brave for trying it, but yeah, it just didn't work out for him.
6th place was Christian Lundgaard, who was on the power McLaughlin strategy. Didn't quite work out for Lundgaard as I think people hoped. He cycled up to, must have been 2nd early on in the race, and then didn't quite have the pace here. The ones that was a bit surprising, he couldn't get past the likes of Palou and Rosenqvist on their fuel saves, but I think I'll still take 6th place. He obviously qualified 3rd, which is a pretty good performance for him, and RLF had a slightly difficult start to the season, so I think Lundgaard will take confidence from the result today. It's the same result as he got in Alabama last year, so I think maybe there was more on the table for Christian Lundgaard, but I think all things considered, they'll definitely take a 6th place.
Yeah, again, it's kind of a continuation. They're pretty consistent now on road courses. They're always there or thereabouts inside the top 10, and I think it says a lot about Lundgaard and how much he's developed that he qualified 3rd, and no one really bat an eyelid at it. It was kind of just like, oh yeah, he's up there again in road course qualifying. So I think top teams will really be wanting to acquire his services if he doesn't stay at RLL, that is.
7th place was Santino Ferrucci, who had quite a bonkers race. He got his elbows out all day long. I think it was Colton Herter, wasn't it? At the start, he was getting a bit argy-bargy with. They gave themselves a friendly nudge, and then Ferrucci's team were confident at the end that when everyone else tried to do the Dixon strategy, I know Dixon was on that strategy, we called the Dixon strategy because it was a ridiculous fuel save. They were pretty confident they wouldn't make it. They were pretty right, and then he cycled to the front, led the penultimate restart, and then finished a very solid P7 for Santino Ferrucci's best result since the Indy 500, and I think they'll definitely take that. It was quite fun watching Ferrucci's day. He wasn't afraid to get his elbows out and cause a bit of drama on track.
Yeah, this kind of harks back to my my question to Will Power in the press conference, the hard racing. I think Ferrucci was kind of the epitome of that. But yeah, they had a much smoother weekend than they had in Long Beach, and obviously they just had electrical issues kind of riddle them through practice. And yeah, I think it's the first time we've really seen, okay, maybe the Penske Alliance is starting to help them somewhat. We don't know to what extent. Even led the race at one point after the caution incidentally brought out by his teammate Stingray Robb. But yeah, I felt maybe he overstepped the mark a little bit in those battles with Herter. There was some quite heavy contact, but as I said earlier, the cars they're pretty robust, aren't they? I think there were similar moments with the likes of Lundqvist, I think Rasmussen as well. And
I like a bit of argy-bargy racing. I mean, look, I'm not like a Formula One person. I want everyone penalised for pushing people off track. There is a limit, and I think Ferrucci was right at that limit. But it's always good to see that sort of hard end racing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on that. I'd just like to echo that point that you've made about we don't want to see that sort of stuff penalised, because at the end of the day, it's what kind of makes the product unique and kind of just as entertaining as it is. And it's probably the right time to bring up, it was a Barber record with 189 on-track passes, 281 of which were for position. So that's very impressive on a track.
289 passes, I think it said 189. So
yeah, so 289 on-track passes, and only 8 of those were not for position. So yeah, that's very impressive on a track that is regarded as being very hard to overtake on.
Herta finished P8 in the end. I don't really quite know how, because I felt like he was about 20th all day, and then he appeared P8. He must have been on quite an aggressive strategy and ended up there, because I can't really tell you much. He was in the argy-bargy Ferrucci at the start, but just actually ended up P8. And actually, Herta now leads the championship standings because of Power's points penalty, which is actually the first time in his career, which feels slightly surprising that's the case. But we obviously spoke to Colton last week about the improvements Andretti and made, and it's really noticeable. You said last year how difficult it was, and look, today's result wasn't an incredible result, but it's these results you need. It's what sort of Pelot had last year, where if he wasn't the quickest, he still bagged a decent result. And an 8th place is certainly a very respectable result from Herta, and obviously backed up the 2 podiums at the start of the year. So currently leads the standings by 1 point. So credit where credit's due to Colton Herta. He's had a fantastic start to the year, and yesterday wasn't incredible, but it's these points which win championships.
He hasn't always managed to just cycle up in this sort of race where he's often lower down the order, and these are just, as you said, the sort of results he really needs to pick up consistently. And it's been a really strong start to the season. Obviously, with the way that things have gone with St. Pete, he actually picked up a podium there. So along with his podium at Long Beach, that is 2 podiums, which is double what he managed last year. So he started this season really well. And like you, I'm not really sure how he appeared up where he did, but he did, and that's the sort of thing we want to see more from him if he is to really challenge this championship, which I genuinely believe he probably has the capability to do. Keep an eye on the DIVEBOMB site for me and Dan do a winners and losers piece at the end of the weekend. I think Colton Herta is one that I'm considering as a winner this weekend, coming out on top of the championship after quite a quiet day.
9th place was Marcus Armstrong, who was on the fuel safe strategy, which didn't quite work out. I think he must have lost a few positions in the restart as well. But he did qualify for his first fast 6, which feels really odd. I mean, when the stat was said, I was like, I'm sure he has done, but he seems to always top Group 1, but just never quite gets it done in the fast 12. But he's finally ticked that box this weekend. Finished 9th place. He was on for his best result on a road course. Didn't quite happen, but all things considered, I think Armstrong will take a lot of confidence from this weekend.
So far, it was his best kind of finish this season. He got 12th in Long Beach and then 25th in St. Pete. But yeah, last year he started 26th and then finished 11th. So he didn't kind of have that climb that he had this year, but it was still a really good race. And especially at the in the middle at the beginning, I kind of thought maybe he could have been going on for a podium and kind of been a bit higher up, but like I said, he was on the fuel save, and I think some of the restarts got him. But other than that, it was a really good race from him.
Yeah, I quite liked his livery as well, the orange and black Root Insurance car. Again, Morgan Assey chopping and changing liveries, but first ever Fast 6, as you said, Dan, it kind of feels like he's probably should have been there before, but it's just been a case of not really putting weekends together. And I think this was probably the first time I feel like he's really properly put the weekend together and made the most of pace that, for instance, we've seen in the first segment of qualifying and then has never translated into Fast 12.
He was ahead of Carl Kirkwood. Who did Kirkwood get aggressive with? There was someone he was getting a bit feisty with. Do you remember who?
Here we go.
Grosjean.
I've got it in my notes. It was Grosjean. It was in front of me this whole time. It was in front of me. It was Grosjean, yes. And then, actually, yeah. That was quite a nice moment in the race, actually, because Grosjean shoved him off, and then Kirkwood did the same back to him shortly after. So I think if you're dealing it, you have to be able to accept it as well.
He was ahead of Graham Rahal, who, he didn't really get an incident. He, of course, got Dixon to have an incident, but he didn't really cause it. Well, he sort of moved across Dix. It's one of those where Dixon was trying an opportunity to move. Rahal didn't see him, and it sort of ended in a bit of misfortune for Dixon.
Racing incident.
It wasn't Rahal's fault. He was ahead of Grosjean, who, as we said, got a bit argy-bargy with Kirkwood.
Grosjean got a bit argy-bargy with about everyone this weekend.
Yeah,
I mean,
to be fair, that's true.
We had I'll get onto his response to this in our funny moments of the weekend, but he pushed Jack Harvey off track in practice after feeling he was impeded a little bit, when really Harvey did all he could after coming out of the pits, left a bit of space. That moment in practice with Harvey wasn't exactly great, but Grosjean said he was embarrassed and not proud of it, so fair enough. Apologised, took accountability. Good to see him doing that. Did that in St. Pete as well after the Lundqvist collision. He showed pace all weekend, really. I feel like he almost could have qualified better than 11th, second in second practice. But you know what? I think he's putting together a bit of consistency. He's finished a race again. Got
argy-bargy with Lundqvist as well, apparently, according to Twitter. I mean, I can't remember. Everyone seemed to have a bit of contact.
Yeah, that was just how the race was. It was nice and vintage almost.
Talking of Harvey, he was actually the one who was ahead of, which Harvey is probably one of the only ones to have a quite quiet day. Although, did he get hit at turn 1? I feel like he did.
He did. Jailcoin Racing have struggled quite a lot this year. There's been a lot of uncertainty, as we'll get onto with their second driver, who nobody could have expected. But yeah, no, Harvey cycled it well into the top 15. Maybe there was a bit of strategy, but you know what? Good on the team. They've not always got the strategy right, and they've definitely not always had the pace to finish 13th. And I think Harvey's just said there was kind of just incremental progress all through the last few weekends, and he actually felt in qualifying there's enough pace to transfer. But it feels like they're starting to ride a little bit of momentum, and to have that incident in the first corner be spun around, no fault of his own, and then recover to 13th.
Team's best result in Alabama since which driver?
Connor Daly, let's say.
Grosjean, ironically. So.
Oh, Grosjean. Okay.
It's all one massive circle, isn't it? He was ahead of Kiffin Simpson, who also got caught up in turn 1, I feel. Maybe not as much.
Yeah, he wasn't spun round, but he had to go off track. And talking of Kiffin Simpson off track, he had one of the coolest off-track excursions in a weekend of a lot of off-track excursions. He went off track onto the grass, flew up into the air, and kind of created a bit of a divot. He kind of went front wing first, and somehow the front wing was still intact.
But yeah, he finished 14th. He had a quite a day. It's one of those where, like Harvey, like Simpson, if you had a respectable strategy and sort of just kept your car on the road, which you did, to be fair, you'd get a decent result. So he finished 14th in the mid pack, which was pretty respectable. 15th, Scott Dixon. His race was sort of undone when he hit Rahal. No fault of his own, but he obviously got stuck spinning at Charlotte's Web, and he was one of those on a strategy which was quite difficult. He was on the Pillow strategy, then he had to top up for fuel because even he thought that strategy was impossible. So long way back from there. It's pretty disappointing, obviously, for Dixon because he was a championship leader going to this event, but obviously hasn't quite worked out. He now lies 4th in the standings, I believe, which, they're only 7 points off first, but obviously he'll be a bit disappointed because this is a track, I think, before this weekend, he finished in the top 10 at every single visit here. So I think he'll be pretty disappointed that stats ended. But, these things happen, a bit of a messy race for everyone, and he was included.
Yeah, I'm not sure culpability-wise on that Rahal thing. It was a racing incident.
It was unfortunate. I think Dixon was maybe a bit opportunistic going for a space which was closing, but Rahal obviously.
I think he thought the gap was there. Rahal didn't know he was there. So yeah, racing incident. It was a tough day for Dixon, but it was also a tough day for a lot of those kind of top names.
Well, just like the man behind him, Josef Newgarden, who he was just a bit nowhere all race, really, wasn't he? He made contact with Marcus Armstrong, actually, which we didn't touch on earlier, in the final corner. So did Power and Lundqvist, actually, in very similar circumstances, but we didn't touch on that. That sent him off slightly into the gravel, only lost 1 or 2 positions. But he was one of those, similarly to Dixon and a few others beneath him, where he was just on the wrong strategy, really, and there was sort of no recovering from there. Obviously, we know about the week he's had, and this result probably isn't the most satisfactory. As we said, he lies 16th in the standings. So once all's been said and done, it's not been a great start to the year for Newgarden, and this just sort of compounds a bit of a miserable week for him.
It feels so weird to say it's not been a good start to the season after a win and a 4th place, but that's just how it is because the win no longer exists, and as he said, rightly so. But yeah, disappointing day. Kind of felt he'd refocused a bit after a week of hindered preparations. Didn't sleep that well. Couldn't go through his same rituals, etc. Before looking at data, onboards, what have you. So yeah, disappointing day. I think it could have been better. Again, it was kind of one of those where it didn't quite work out for him on strategy.
He was ahead of Rieders Vico, who again felt like one who just didn't have a strategy. It was a bit of a shame because Vico seemed to have loads of pace all weekend. He top practice 2, and then he had an electrical or mechanical issue in qualifying, which relegated him to the back of the field. And I feel like he had more, and he probably thinks himself he probably had a bit more to show.
Man, yeah, what a shame. What a shame for VK. Ed Carpenter Racing looked a whole load better. We'll get into Christian Rasmussen shortly, and this is a track that VK's good at as well. Podium in 22. He was top actually for the first time in any session since warm up in Toronto in 2022 in second practice, but then massive blow in qualifying. He could have been a bet for at least fast 6, possibly even better. And so, yeah, he was, instead of being right up at the head as he possibly could have been, he was right at the bottom, caught up at the start. He kind of caused the mess at the start. Yeah, it's hard, you know, it's hard to put loads of blame on him. It was right that he was penalised for avoidable contact, tagged Rob, he spun into Harvey. But then it was kind of recovery from there. Yeah, he recovered strong, and he was probably one of the raciest cars out there, really, maybe along with Ferrucci. Just shame how it, didn't really translate to a result.
Yeah, Ericsson ended up 18th. I mean, again, he's one of those who was just lounging around 20th all day and just could never really get going. So I don't think we really. Ericsson got argy-bargy or something, didn't he? Who did he get aggressive with?
Rasmussen tried to hold it around the outside.
That was it. Yeah,
that was probably that was kind of more on Rasmussen. I think kind of just a little bit naive, trying to hold it around the outside after Ericsson had gone inside. But argy-bargy again. The watchword today.
Yeah. Might have been the name of the podcast, argy-bargy, this one.
I was going to say that.
He was ahead of Tom Lundqvist, who again is one who probably just didn't get the result he deserved. I don't think he got into incidents with anyone, did he?
He just don't think so. I think it was more
I think he got shoveled wide once, but
he did actually. It wasn't anything dramatic, I don't think, but he did get shoveled wide by someone. Everyone seemed to get basically just forced wide on the exit of turn 5 this weekend for whatever reason.
Yeah,
so
I actually feel it for Lundqvist because, again, as I said, Meyer Shank, kind of on the whole, this was the first time both cars had got into the fast 12, and actually in the group in Q1, he was only about 2/10 off Rosenqvist, which is really good progression. I know it's the first track he'd actually tested at before coming into the weekend. But yeah, he definitely seems to be making progress every week. Obviously, it was his first fast 12, and it just didn't work out in the race. I think he had a stall in the pits, didn't he, at one point? That maybe set him back a little, but yeah, unfortunate for Lundqvist, but it was progress. It's again, if he progresses every weekend, regardless of result, I think he'll be relatively happy.
He'll take confidence from the fast 12. It was a good qualifying performance, and I think he said it's good to see us moving up the pit lane every single week. And I think Lundqvist can be certainly pleased with that. 20th place was Agustin Canapino. I think had the messiest day out of everyone. He seemed to be in the wars absolutely everywhere we went, and I think he still ended up being 7 drivers in the end, which isn't too bad of a result for Canapino considering the day he had. He spun in the pits, didn't he? Which was a bit of a bizarre accident, completely by himself, and he seemed to be having contact with everyone. I mean, I don't know where to start off his race. It was just a bit nuts for Canapino.
The one incident that I can remember is the one with Rasmussen. I think Canapino went on the inside of him, and then Rasmussen kind of went off, and I think he had some before.
Yeah, I think as much as I think I don't know his exact results in the first 2 races off the top of my head, but I feel like he's just had a bit of a messy season so far. I think
16th and 15th,
which again is not that bad, but I feel like he's just making a few too many errors. He's had some messy practice sessions, especially Long Beach. I felt he caused a few red flags at Long Beach. He was going off quite a bit in practice here. Yeah, the semi sort of spin in the pitch was a bit of a yikes moment. And then he was penalised for that contact with Rasmussen. Not a phenomenal result, and I think it was just a bit of a messy weekend.
He had a spin in practice as well, and I think the NBC team mentioned this. It's like second-year drive, and maybe he's trying to do too much in the car. Maybe he's sort of pushing the limits of the car, and maybe he just needs to take a step back a little bit. I think obviously he did really well in the Furman, actually, which obviously points to that. But it's just a bit of a messy weekend. Long Beach was a bit messy. It's just needs to maybe calm down a little bit. Maybe it's a Latin American thing, as we'll get onto a bit later. 21st was Luca Giotto, who made his IndyCar debut this weekend. I think Dale Coyne took the time to outside drive. I think Giotto himself said he didn't find out until Monday that he was in the car, which sums up the state of Dale Coyne's driver announcements. But he will be in for the Indy GP, so we have that secured. I mean, Coyne have their drivers secured for an entire month. He made his IndyCar debut. I think he qualified pretty respectably. He qualified 21st in the end. He beat 2 full-timers in his group, in Simpson and Rob. I don't know if that sums up Simpson or Rob, or it puts Giotto in the spotlight, but I think that was pretty impressive considering he'd never been in IndyCar before this weekend. So excellent performance by Giotto in that front. Finished 21st. He wasn't particularly quick, but it'd be crazy to expect him to be very quick in his first outing and possibly the worst car in the field. So 21st. Interesting call-up, as I think Archie, you alluded to earlier. I mean, we don't really ever know who to expect of Coyne. I think when it was announced, I said I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't that. So that's what we sort of get with Coyne, isn't it?
Sums it up well, doesn't it? But yeah, I think he was pretty good, to be fair, because it's a while since he's been in a single seater. A lot of his stuff since has been sports cars, LMP2. I think it's 4 years since he's been full time in Formula 2, and now he had a sponsor as well. You raised that during the weekend, Dan. That's good news for Coyne, and yeah, to have performed so well at such short notice. I don't know. They must have contacted the team because it's left field. I don't imagine Coyne have thought, oh, let's try Luca Giotto. He made really good progress through practice. He was, I think, 7/10 off Harvey in first practice, and only 2/10 by second practice, and just over a second off the pace, which is a really, really good job. And
it's a hard track as well, Barber.
Hard, physical. If you've not been in a single-seater car for ages, sports cars aren't anywhere near as physical as single-seater cars, and especially an IndyCar around Barber. Relatively error-free, had one off-track excursion midway through the race, but who didn't really have an off-track excursion at some point? Finished 21st. Yeah, maybe some behind him had incidents, what have you, but yeah, kept it clean for the most part and showed some pretty decent pace. So good job.
If anyone said Luca Giotto last week, and before he actually knew, I think that would have been pretty impressive. You never know, might have seen a bit more of him. Who knows? I quite like this Coyne random. Who are we going to select this week? But yeah, we'll see what happens there. Theo Pourchaire actually came back. Obviously impressed in Long Beach. I mean, he slipped up in the press conference that he would be at Barber. But yeah, 22nd. It was a bit more of a reality check, I think, for Pourchaire. Barber's a tough track, as we said. It's very physical, and he didn't have as shining a weekend as he did in Long Beach, but you can't really expect him to perform miracles, and he kept it clean, which was more than a lot of people could do. Although he had some at some point, didn't he? I feel like maybe practice he spun, maybe yes.
I think you're forgetting something at the end of the race.
We're ignoring that. We're ignoring that. We'll come on to that later.
Yes,
okay.
We'll come on to that very soon, actually. But yeah, it was as you kind of said, it was maybe a bit more of a reality check. I think he knew to expect it being quite physical, and he wasn't uncompetitive by any means. He was still there fighting, what have you. He wasn't like at the back or uncompetitive or anything. But yeah, maybe a bit of a reality check. But I still think, good signs. Apparently the team are pretty impressed with him. I think it's been mentioned. We spoke to Pourchaire in a media availability midway through last week, and I asked him what stood out about the racing in Long Beach, and then also sort of how he felt the car compared to other things he'd driven. And I thought his answer was actually quite interesting, what he said stood out most.
All right, let's go Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports. Go ahead, Theo.
Thank you, Dave. Hi, Theo. Good job last weekend. I just wanted to ask, I guess, how did you find the racing product in IndyCar, and how did that maybe compare to other things, and how excited are you to really experience more of it?
The racing product is really good. The good thing in IndyCar is that everybody has the same chassis, same tires. You can, of course, develop a little bit the cars. If I'm right, you can develop a little bit the dampers, or that kind of things. But it's quite simple category. You have two engines, of course, which makes it also close. So that's why the racing is good, and the level of the drivers is amazing. You have really experienced drivers like Dixon. And also rookies, and everybody is good, so it makes the racing really tough, and I like it. I enjoyed a lot Long Beach. I hope I can perform well again in Barber, but I think I will enjoy it in Barber. There is also a lot of overtaking possibilities, and the racing looks good there.
And was there anything specific about the car that really stood out to you that made it quite fun to drive, maybe?
Yeah, the power. It's very powerful, which is really, really good. When you're in the car, you accelerate, and it's like, wow, hey, there's a lot of power. I was surprised, and I was smiling. I was a little bit not scared, but in Long Beach, the first lap, I was like, it's very bumpy and very powerful. I have to be careful, but in Long Beach, in Barber, it's gonna be fine. And it's very powerful, and I like it. To drive, it's close to F2, so it's something I'm used to a little bit, even though it's, again, a new car. But it's good to drive. It's very fun.
This is awkward. Hello, listeners of DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. This is Future Danny editing the podcast. We were in the whole section about David Malukas at this point and his recovery. However, the situation has kind of changed since we recorded the episode, so stay tuned for our full thoughts on the situation next week. Sorry for interrupting. Let's continue with the episode. Right, Pato O'Ward, an absolute disaster, but we can celebrate because for the first time in the podcast, he's finally won a race. It's been a long time coming.
Yes. I mean, yeah, fair play to Pato, winning a race without leading a lap. It is a little bit shameless, Dan. The celebrations after a messy Long Beach weekend and I think what's worse than messy, probably a slightly disastrous weekend at Barber. I mean, it just started off horrendously. He misjudged. His braking point was at turn 5. That was what was catching a lot of people out. He wasn't the only one caught out, but spun, went off track, dropped him down the order, running around Pietro Fittipaldi. Again, he wasn't intentionally taking him out or anything, but he kind of just clumsily rode the curb straight into Fittipaldi. That was a drive-through penalty. O'Ward kind of claimed it was a racing incident, but I think once he's seen it back, he'll kind of realise, you know what, yeah, that was kind of out of pocket, really. Never managed to recover. Then later on, we saw Pourchaire spun round, and post-race, it was shown that actually O'Ward drove into him and then was given another penalty and dropped behind Pourchaire. So
O'Ward was driving like he was still celebrating from the St. Petersburg result. I think the alcohol effect hadn't turned off by the time he got to the race. But
it's such a weird situation, isn't it? Because we're here saying, oh, he's had 2 pretty poor weekends in a row, but somehow in between that, he's got given a race win.
Look,
what a weird week,
not complaining. This episode has been a long. It's not the way I expected it. I intended to do my first episode on the podcast and say Ward won a race, but you know, we'll absolutely take it. I'm looking forward to a more traditional victory. Put it that way. As O'Ward fans will all forget the messiness of Barber. It was a pretty catastrophic weekend, but he won St. Petersburg. Whether he would have won without Newgarden's push to pass, cheating or whatever, I mean, I don't think he would have done anyway, but you've got to shamelessly celebrate. Like Pato shamelessly celebrated on Twitter, tweeting Newgarden, I can send you my address if you want to send me the hardware or something.
O'Ward inherits it without leading a lap. But you know what? Fair play. You've got to be in that position just in case whatever ridiculous circumstance may happen.
Probably the last driver to win a race without leading a lap because obviously you get the point for it. So he's in a bizarre situation where he's won a race but not got a point for leading a lap. I say he needs to buck up his ideas already together. Even after the last 2 weekends, you're still sick from the standings. It's been such a crazy season where no one has been able to really put together 3 races in a row that it's a bit of a free-for-all. Like, as I said, O'Ward is 6th in the championship. Lundqvist is 8th, even pretty much just with this podium, as he's only finished inside the top 12. Ferrucci is in 10th. Like, the standings are so random because no one's been able to put it together.
Well, McLaughlin's 9th, and he came into this weekend with 5 points on the table. So that kind of says it all, doesn't it? But I think O'Ward's just got to collect himself, hasn't he? I think today was just a little bit, I don't know whether he was maybe a little bit desperate after the early incident coming through, then hit Fittipaldi, obviously. And then from there, he obviously wasn't really anywhere. So, yeah, just collect himself, go back to that more measured sort of mindset again.
So I'm obviously shamelessly celebrating O'Ward's win and his absolute disaster class in the official Pato O'Ward jerseys. You can see here to the camera, all the viewers. You can pick up jerseys like this at Formula Model Shop, the official sponsor of the DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast, the best place to get IndyCar merchandise in the UK, such as driver shirts, and in the rest of Europe.
You can also pick up some trading cards if you fancy. Maybe keep an eye out on the DIVEBOMB YouTube channel in the coming days for a special pack opening courtesy of FMS. And if you want to pick up your trading cards, you can use the discount code 5BOMB, or one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off all products on the FMS site. You can visit our Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram for a link to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
And you can find the FMS site via a banner on the DIVEBOMB website by visiting formulamodelshop.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
O'Ward had a messy day. I think Christian Rasmussen might have been the only person to have a messier day than him. He obviously had that incident with Ericsson, a bit of a rookie ever, probably being a bit too opportunistic, lost a lot of places. And then obviously, of course, the final caution, 5 laps to go when he spun by himself in turn 15. But yeah, bit of a messy weekend for Rasmussen, which is a bit of a shame because he looked a lot quicker this weekend than he has done in previous races.
It was a shame because I think generally as a team, as I said on VK, they look pretty good. It was the best they've looked, I think, collectively as a unit for quite a while. Obviously, probably aside from the Indy 500 last year. Rasmussen could very easily have been in the Fast 12 again. It's just kind of little errors that he's making. I think he got a bit greedy in the end, he said. But he's getting comfortable pretty quickly. Again, I think his season's been kind of like Lundqvist's has been so far. Obviously without the podium now. But yeah, there was actually a heart-and-mouth moment again at the start of the race. It looked like he wasn't going to get off pit lane like he did like he didn't manage to at St. Pete, but quickly got rolling. Yeah, I think there were a few of the more experienced guys kind of maybe shoved him around a little bit. So I don't really begrudge him for the Ericsson moment. I think he was trying to hold on there. Like I've noted Kirkwood, Ferrucci kind of moved him a little bit. So I think he was trying to be more bold there. It was good to see him racing, the likes of even Will Power at some points during the race. Yeah, it felt like there were constantly a few little things he was having to recover from. Again, solid weekend. Yeah, obviously ended it with an incident, but at this stage, like I think I said with Lundqvist, and like all that applies to all rookies, I think early on progress probably kind of means more than results as such.
Ed Carpenter probably could only feel slightly disappointed that they ended with 17th and 24th because there was more on the table, but it's good to see Rasmussen's on the pace. That's something they can take confidence from. But when you look at results on paper, it's just been a bit of a frustrating start to the year where it feels like there has been a lot of potential, but it hasn't quite been fulfilled. So Alexander Rossi, he was having quite a quiet day, actually, until he lost a wheel coming out of his pits.
Yeah, I'd kind of put him in the Canapino ballpark, to be honest, of having had quite a messy weekend. He seems to be just off track in every single session at some point. Obviously, the way that the race ended wasn't his fault, but again, it's kind of just a case of that team not really putting everything together at the moment. He started the season with 2 pretty solid results, but I don't feel like it's by any means been that straightforward. So
he was ahead of Stingray Robb, who had quite a unfortunate accident. Seemed to lose steering midway through a corner. It was quite a big hit into turn 1. He was obviously all okay.
Yeah, it was going into turn 1, and I think he came on the radio afterwards saying that he think his steering wheel broke, and also it was something to do with the toe link, I think, that snapped. So it, like I said, just lost kind of all control of the steering, and he couldn't really do anything about it.
Yeah, I think he said that there were only wires holding the steering wheel on, which I don't know whether that's a legacy of the actual impacts or not, but that's never going to be good. And talking of steering issues, Pietro Fittipaldi had a very bizarre steering issue in second practice, where his steering rack basically came loose and he just completely lost steering. I think it was one of the sort of an uphill right-hander. I don't know the track off by heart to say what corner it was. Okay, there we go. Track guru Dan. You'll quickly learn that Dan is a master with everything tracks. Yeah, it was a very bizarre incident. Completely lost steering, and his kind of wheels were just wobbling around. And thankfully, it was going uphill, and it wasn't one of the faster corners. But that was a bit bizarre. But I think just generally, quick word on Fittipaldi. Got a bit of pace to find, I think. It was unfortunate the way that his race ended, being sent out of the race by O'Ward. Yeah, I think he's got some work to do, to be fair, to get on pace with his teammates, who both seem to be in pretty good form. Yeah, still early days. Not done that many road course races. In that regard, he's pretty much a rookie, so got to cut him some slack.
Yeah, I think they said there's only 4 tracks he's actually been to on the schedule. Obviously, he's not officially a rookie, but in reality, he sort of is. So, bit of a shame. We won't touch on the incident because I don't want to gloss over it. We'll celebrate the win instead. Right, let's go on to our weekend awards. I think we're quite looking forward to the second one, but let's take it a bit more professional for the first one. Unsung hero of the weekend. Now, I think there's quite a lot to choose from here. So we'll give us a minute and we'll pick our unsung heroes.
My unsung hero of the weekend, I'm going to go for Jack Harvey. I think he probably maybe won't be picked out. Obviously, it's quite a wild race in some regards, and I think people may kind of notice the impressive finishes of Santino Ferrucci in 7th, for instance. And I just want to make sure that Harvey finishing 13th, as I said, for a coin team that have faced a lot of uncertainty, have had a pretty difficult start to the season, that he's finished 13th. Maybe a little bit of attrition, a little bit of strategy, but I think he is pretty much there on merit. So yeah, good job to him, and good job for the team for also aiding him to get up to that position.
Marcus Armstrong, I think he kind of had a good race. He got his highest finish this year, and I think if it wasn't for the fuel save and everything, he would have been higher. He even had the moments where he was kind of up at the top, and like I said, that could have continued if it wasn't for maybe some of the timing of the cautions and the fuel saving.
I know he's been pretty mainstream, but I think I'm going to give it to Santino Ferrucci. I think for a Foyt team which has struggled in recent years, one, he got his elbows out. He was not afraid to race hard, which we really like. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to the 14 team. They said these guys aren't going to make it on fuel. We're going to stay out. Ferrucci, I think, led the second most. He did lead the second most laps of any driver with 14, and I think to play that strategy was an absolute masterstroke and ended with a really impressive 7th place. As I said, Ferrucci was making good moves. He was getting his elbows out. He wasn't afraid to put his foot up there where probably he doesn't belong. So I'd give a lot of credit to Ferrucci in this one. I think he's really a bit my unsung hero. I think we'll move on to the funniest moment of the weekend. I don't think this needs any introduction to what's going to be picked here. Possibly the most bizarre moment in IndyCar history. I think Barber must have a trend of having really weird moments. If you've never seen this before, the recovery vehicle once fell on its side in 2019, which was quite funny. But I think that was topped this weekend by a mannequin falling on the side of the track called Georgina, and the way it just sort of falls down, its skirt goes down with it, and it just collapses on the side of the track falls from the bridge, to make clear. It's quite simply unbelievable.
I've been losing my composure at seeing tweets pop up on my phone, notifications throughout this recording. It's managed to make its way to the media centre, and Scott McLaughlin and various other people have been posing for pictures with this utter just legend of a fake figure of a person. And it was just, I think the funniest thing, and apparently James Hinchcliffe completely lost it in the booth. I'd love to see a clip of that. It was like the way it almost stuck the landing, but then falls over. When you first see it, it's a little bit alarming when the camera first cuts to it, and you think, "Oh my God, what is this?" But obviously, like if you know Barber is a track, you know it's just littered with mannequins. Why there's one on top of the bridge going over the track, we'll never quite know. Poor Georgina got her hand ripped off by Luca Giotto. That's quite something to have in your first IndyCar race.
For Giotto, if he only ever does 2 IndyCar races, at least he'll stay long in the memory.
That's a great point. He'll be an IndyCar folklore forever. But we'll play the clip in. But Will Power was, oh my God, he was hilarious afterwards. He said that he said it would be funny if it ended up in somebody's cockpit and attacked them, basically.
About the lady on the bridge that fell.
Yeah. Is that a yellow? No.
It was not a yellow.
I saw yellow comes out and there's a lady lying on the side. I'm like, you're kidding me. That's a yellow for that lady? Who let her down? Yeah. That would have been funny if it came in someone's cockpit. Like, it's a lady attacking me.
Whenever y'all were coming up to that part of the track, did y'all have awareness that it was simply a mannequin?
Oh, no, I saw it. I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was a lady hanging there. Yeah, they're going to have to seriously get some good cables to hang. Did someone run over it?
They got nipped her hand, I believe.
Luca.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It should go in a glass case. Like after that, preserve the body, mummify it.
I don't even know where to start of it. It's one of those IndyCar classic moments where you can't describe it. Like it's just so random, and a lot of the drivers thought, obviously it came at a similar time to Rob crashing. A lot of people thought the caution was for this mannequin landing on the side of the track. If it landed 2 meters to its right, I think we would have had a caution for a mannequin on the track. So, it's brilliant.
Either of you got any of the funny moments to put out there? Because I do have one.
Not that will top that, no.
But I mentioned earlier, absolutely doesn't top that. But Romain Grosjean, after his Jack Harvey scuffle that we spoke about earlier, the reason that he actually ended up driving Harvey off the track was not necessarily purposeful, proving a point. It was because he said he was doing the French move that I was complaining, and basically took his hand off the wheel and accidentally didn't turn and steered into Harvey. So that's a funny little anecdote, I think. But yeah, Grosjean, it looked idiotic at the time, but he apologised and realised that it was stupid. But that was funny, but not as funny as Georgina, the mannequin. That was I think
that might be moment of the year.
That might be moment of the year already. This year's punch in the face, I think.
5-stone Fast 6 predicted tournament. Scores on the doors heading into Alabama. I'm on 7, Archie's on 5, and Ellie is on 5. Archie, your prediction went as follows. Pato O'Ward, good. Felix Rosenqvist, good. Marcus Ericsson, not so good. Alex Palou, not so good. Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, 4 out of 6.
Best so far. That is my best so far.
Yeah, so I think by the end of the year, I think one of us will get all 6. I reckon it happened once. Let's hope it does.
Yeah, if we're getting 4, then it's hopeful.
I went for Pato O'Ward, Scott McLaughlin. Goes a bit down here from here. Alex Palou. Brinus VK, I actually think probably would have made it if he didn't have that engine issue, which is a bit of a shame. Roman Grosjean was looking good all weekend as well, so it wasn't an outlandish shout. And Josef Newgarden. So I ended on a pitiful 2. And Ellie, you went for Pato O'Ward, good start. You went for Rosenqvist, good start. You went for McLaughlin, good. Grosjean, not so good. Power, not so Power, good. Sorry, and Ericsson. So obviously you two went pretty similar. So that's 4 there. So scores on the doors, 9 apiece.
Wow,
in Alabama.
That's what the fans love to see. I'm sure everyone's invested.
It's very tight. So entering the Indy GP, we'll obviously put our predictions in next week. It's all level.
Do you know what? If only we included thermal, I would have been ahead here.
That was a non-championship race. So.
I know.
Right. We've also got the British Podium Predictor Tournament. So your predictions going to this race are as follows. Mine was Palou, Power, Dixon. Archie, you went for Newgarden, McLaughlin, Palou. Ellie, you went for Power, O'Ward, Palou. Josh Mason went for McLaughlin, O'Ward, Dixon. Fallen Model Shop went for Newgarden, Hurst, McLaughlin. Tom Gamer went for Palou, McLaughlin, O'Ward. Dive Bomb fans went for Newgarden, Palou, Dixon. And Dive Bomb IndyCar writers went for Palou, McLaughlin, Ericsson. So that means with me getting Power bang on, I got 3 points. Archie, with you being one off of McLaughlin, you got 2 points, which puts you on the board. Ellie, with you being one off of Power, that got you 2 points. Josh Mason got McLaughlin bang on, which gives him 3. Formula Model Shop got 1 point for Pitt McLaughlin in third. Tom Gamer got 2 points for Pitt McLaughlin in second. The Dive Bomb fans got 0 points this week, the only non-score of the week, as the Dive Bomb IndyCar writers got 2 points for picking McLaughlin in second.
A lot of McLaughlin seconds.
I was really annoyed actually because I was tossing it up between Newgarden and McLaughlin. I went for Newgarden and it didn't pay off. But the championship standings, which will be on screen now, but I will read them out to you anyway. So we'll go top to bottom, continuing to lead the championship, but by himself this week is Josh Mason. He's on 6 points. Joint second is me and the IndyCar writers, both on 5. 4 points by himself is Tom Gamer in 4th, followed by the Dive Bomb followers in 5th. Get involved next week. We'll obviously put it in our story before the GP. Poor week for you followers. You need to recover this week. And in joint 6th place is Fallen Model Shop, Archie and Ellie.
Good company.
Good company. Alice, you're off the board this week, so you've got it going. So it's very tight early stages. You know, you could have a banging week, get 9 points, and your season's completely turned around. So hopefully for Indy, we might get 1 or 2 more people playing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But your scores on the doors. Something I forgot to mention in the podcast last week, which is very, very dear to my heart. Podcast folklore. Sebastian Bourdais. Now a better combination than Sebastian Bourdais and Long Beach. Romped home in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship to win. So Sebastian Bourdais in Long Beach, the legacy continues. If we have like a Hall of Fame IndyCar podcast, that overtake 2018, number 1. I think Georgina might be challenging that at this rate. But no,
don't mention Georgina again. I'm going to lose it again.
That's going to be the end of the year best moments, I think, when the time comes to it. Next week, unfortunately, there is no racing, but after that, I think we have 4 or 5 straight weeks of on-track action. So the IndyCar schedule is going to get very busy, but we sort of have a nice, relaxing week off before the month of May, before we hit the road course and the Indy 500. With it being the biggest month of the year and not having much time to preview stuff, we are just going to have a look at what's going to happen in May, preview the Indianapolis 500 to a small extent, obviously. We'll have a bit of a preview post-qualifying, but we will review that next week. Next week also signifies, anyone know?
A year of our podcast.
1 year of the Dive Bomb IndyCar podcast. It was between Alabama and Indy GP last year that the podcast started. So we'll bring it up again next week, but it will be episode 52 straight weeks. I mean, taken 52 weeks for both me and Archie's favourites to win a race, but we finally got there. We thought the day would never come, but That's it. We obviously had the Penske news at the start, which Pato will just benefactor of, and Scott McLaughlin romping home to a dominant victory at Barber Motorsports Park. That's all we've got time for this week. Crazy week of IndyCar, but a crazy race to go with it, and a thoroughly enjoyable one at that. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.